wrong that they should do right? What is it that they should change? If there is anything that they should change, if there is anything that they are doing wrong, is it right for us to call our women reject? Is it right for us to call our women jolofinas? Is it right for us to be for our women to have so many expectations? Because Nigerians have given them 3,000, or foreigners or Somalians, we must also give them 3,000. On my side, I only have 150. 3,000 is a lot. I cannot afford. So what is your take, my sister?
Hi everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Let me drop my sister here. Okay. Yes, we hear you loud and clear.
I think it's very important for us to consider that situations or like issues, the one that we brought out now, is not a linear issue. We cannot blame solid things or like things written in stone to say these are to blame for example, South African women deciding to, involve themselves romantically or prefer, men from other countries as opposed to, their brothers. I feel like we have to first remember, go just beyond the physical. We have like psychological things that are at play where, for example, the South African men has highlighted it very correctly to say that there's a lack of accountability and, an enabled behavior that is perpetuated by South African men that then they don't want to accept responsibility and take accountability. But also I have to emphasize the fact that when we compare these different countries, let's compare men brought up in Nigeria, for example, since they are the most popular, choice for South African women. Suppose a man is brought up in Nigeria, in a traditional Nigerian home, and a man is brought up in a traditional South African home. Their values are very different. Most likely in a Nigerian home, it would be both mother and father. It doesn't mean there aren't any emotional issues in those relationships, but I feel like in those communities, or most of these communities, family is held intact. You know what I'm saying? So that person is instinct as a human towards their mom, towards their parents, will be different to that of a South African, a young man who saw the father abusing the mother, having multiple women, multiple children, multiple siblings, and then they learn that kind of behavior and it continues generation by generation. Put on top of that economic challenges, political challenges and all of that. Now women, mama daughter are not gonna look at it as like a holistic issue. This contributed to this they will look for the nearest thing for them to blame. And because we are sexual animals, the next best thing is to look at the other gender and see their preferences. You know what I'm saying? So it's very important for us to, while we bash South African men and we highlight all these imperfections, we have to remember that it's a societal thing. We come from a very different history as South African people. Those who are fortunate enough to come from, households where there's parents, where there's always been love for generations, it's quite different from everybody else. So trauma carries trauma. We find different types of South Africans now, black, educated, with money, but they have not learned anything emotionally because of the way they were brought up or the way that society is, especially in the black realm. However, I just also feel like it's like South African men, like they said Vele in the beginning, we're not going to bash the fact that a lot of the foreign men that like are able to splash on women and give women isn't that. First of all, these women in their countries are unwanted. I'm always on Nigerian TikTok and Nigerian ladies are going to talk about, I can't marry a Nigerian. She is in Nigeria. You understand? They have their own grievances about their men. And if we South African women had to be on those spaces and understand the grievances that they have, I don't know if we'd 100% prefer them. But unfortunately, economic decisions drive a lot of the decisions we make. So as long as someone puts bread on my table, we have a lot of young, beautiful South African single mothers whose baby daddies are out there making more babies and not supporting their children. Now comes a clean-looking Nigerian man saying, let me give you 20K, I haven't touched you, 20K. The mind will go over and will boil over because what you're thinking about is the benefit. And now when you're asked about your behavior, you will always use the economic, the economic reason to say, but we are support, but when I went low, when I learned. So I feel like South African men and South African women have this emotional tug of war where we're like, but you guys don't provide, but nina niko faithful, but gunje. So these are not problems that we look at like in a linear way. Like, the light at the end of the tunnel is going to respond to this particular issue. We have to like look at the layers and peel the layers kancane as a society. It's going to take us a while for us to do that. It's going to take South African women a while to, stop being too materialistic. That means the economy must change so that they're able to work and get their own money. Can you see how many things are involved in the betterment of someone's psychology? Because as long as South African men, they don't get jobs in their country because the economy, yes, they have a right to complain and say you have a lot of men from these countries because they are able to acquire economic power in South Africa illegally with all of these layers. Manje, they feel like they can come and talk down on South African men. Now, if you look at news, international, I know I'm going all over the place, I'm sporadic, but if you look all over the news, you find that people in Europe right now, there's an uprising in Europe saying their governments are prioritizing third world imports than they are the nationalities. In London, Islamic people are, sexually assaulting children and blah, blah, blah. But the government arrests fathers who act because their children have been. Do you understand? So we have a similar situation in South Africa where the government seems to care only about the exports and doesn't really doesn't really see the grievances and the problems that their own people that are supposed to serve are actually going through. So if you're going to come to a South African man that's oppressed by their own government, you are protected by this very government, and you tell him to his face that he's lazy, he's this and this and this, he will retaliate and he will bring up all the issues he has with you, and he's going to talk about the women that you guys take, using money, you use them for voodoo, you leave them, have children with them, you go back to your countries, and both sides can exist mutually, but obviously there are effects to both sides. So we need to really, really be careful how we analyze it. I feel like also I've never myself dated a South African man. I know it sounds like quite ironic. I've never dated a South African man myself, simply because of my surroundings. I grew up in the south of Joburg, and then that's where I became mature. There were a lot of foreigners around, and the guys that were interested in me were non-South African. However, I will never stand with a foreign man that feels like they can say whatever they can say about South Africa, whatever they want to say about South African men. If I agree with the notion, I will agree using logic. However, I'm not going to support men from outside, whether I date them, whether I choose them romantically because of what I'm used to. I will not allow people to rain down on my men. Because why? These exact men that gain egos because of our disapproval of our own men are the same men that are disapproved of in their own countries. So we support both sides.
Summarize.
Yes. So basically what I'm saying is we support both sides. We understand the grievances of the men, and we also understand their defects. They don't want to do, they refuse to do even the bare minimum. Also on our side as women, we really need to calculate, yes, you want economic benefit, but does it have to be to the detriment of the men in your own country? Because ultimately you have to live with these men, you have to coexist with these men, and when they become violent. So it's like, there's no right or wrong, but like it's very important for us to be very open about how we perceive such things and how we then have conversations about them with no emotions, just logic and obviously research and history and what's happening, reality. But yeah.
No problem. So my sister, when I want to point out some things and ask you. First question is, you've never dated a South African man.
No.
Somebody saying date them before you comment.
I can comment because I have South African brothers, I have South African colleagues, I am a child of a South African man. Do you understand what I'm saying? Experiences don't entirely have to be romantic. Yes.
No problem. Allow me to finish my question.
Oh, sorry about that. Sorry.
This is a panel, and we have to ask you questions, and some of the questions will trigger you.
Yes,
so
yes.
Be prepared. I'm not fighting you. I've been asking all the panelists, and that's how I always operate. I go for what I hear a person saying. I strike something that I see, this caught my attention, especially things that I feel that they are mistakes that people said. I like to focus on them most of the time. So you didn't make any mistake, I'm just saying.
Okay, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
When you are saying you've lived, I don't usually like to, when you're saying you've lived where you lived, I'll just say where you lived, because I don't want to say where you are or where you lived. For protection's sake, because I always protect our panelists. So when you are saying you've stayed in that part of South Africa, there were no South Africans or many South Africans. Is there a place in South Africa where there's not a lot of South African men for you to date? For the fact that you went for Nigerians, did you go for them because they are the it thing, or you went for them because there were no South African men to date?
Oh, okay. So I live in the south of Johannesburg. It's in Linmere, right?
My sister,
So
please
sorry
try,
about that.
try not to mention
Okay,
names.
so in my
places.
community, I went to a predominantly Portuguese. It was a former Portuguese school. I went to a Portuguese school. I used to go to a church that was predominantly Portuguese. So my accumulation in society, growing up and into adulthood, being able to date, these are the people that were around me. It wasn't Nigerian men; it was actually Angolan men. I live in an area where a lot of Portuguese settlers, Mozambicans, Angolans, Portuguese people settled there. So when we got to the area at the time that I started dating, that's how it happened. And then it happened that I had a few long-term partners that just happened not to be South African. So it wasn't a conscious choice for me to say I've never dated. But looking at my history, I've never really dated a South African. So that's what I mean.
So my sister, you are saying even your friends they were not bringing South Africans. Sigcwele kanje, my sister. Sigcwele kanje. Intshebe ikhona, imali ikhona. Why? So but can you date a South African now? Unga start.
100%. If you come right, you come emotionally, psychologically healed, you come from a good background, no more weak background, right? But you come, I myself as a package, I don't want to blow my own trumpet, but I've worked so hard as an individual. Before I'm South African or anything, I am a woman and I'm an individual. So I'm very responsible for myself. The things that I say and the things that, do you understand? So if you come as that individual, that's like, I'm not saying come with no rough edges, you know what I mean? We can polish each other, but come right, just be a man that is responsible, that takes accountability. Whether you're from the South, the North Pole, it doesn't really matter where you're from. So yes, I would date 100% a South African man, a Zulu man to be precise. Hey, mama, utini, you know what I mean? So it's not a preference of nationality at the end of the day. It's the preference of treatment, of reciprocation, of the energy. Whether women are recipients of the seed, you know that, right? So women are not entirely, unless you go to a traditional South African girl that has heard or had all these atrocities that non-South African men have done, and they have this like inherent fear. Then a girl comes across a man that's loving, that's there, that's proactive, that listens. Do you understand what I'm saying? A woman is going to fall in love. You may come from China, you may come from under the earth, but it's the behavior. But now, because we've attached so much.
My sister, please summarize.
Okay, so what I'm summarizing. What I'm saying is, the grievances that South African men have they're relevant. We hear you, we stand with that. And the grievances that South African women have about South African men, we stand with that. I stand also with the grievances that South African men have with foreign men, especially when it comes to the disrespect and throwing jabs at them. So everybody can be correct, but we need to find middle ground and common ground and actually look at the root cause of our issues instead of being emotional about it and throwing slurs. Abantu don't know how to be logical. Come with logic and they come with the emotion. Emotion will always supersede logic because not everybody can think. But if we can start thinking and promoting like a man, Umpendula, amongst men that were bashing and talking and agreeing with each other, he came with a different perspective, not in a disrespectful way, not demeaning anybody else's opinion, but saying, guys, this is the truth and this is the reality. How do we go forward from there? It's not linear, basically.
No problem. I hear you, my sister. They are saying I'm in my house and they are saying I'm in my shack and I'm opening my eyes like, They are saying I'm shocked and comment section is
and
saying.
And I can see how now, sorry, at the beginning it was like go Noli. Now it's like glorified Jolofina. No, I can make my own decisions. That's the thing that you're refusing. You're refusing to listen to what I'm saying because of who's delivering it. My history has absolutely nothing to do with my perception right now. I'm talking about the comments. You know what I'm saying? Like, use logic, ladies. Come on. Don't fight. Don't call each other names. Use logic. That's it.
No problem. Family, I love this platform because it's.
And I'm a hypocrite. How am I a hypocrite? I can die for Nigerians. You're a hypocrite. I'm not a hypocrite. No, I'm sorry. Sorry. Thank you for the opportunity.
Comment section is always like that. They are not happy.
Yeah, no, but I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Because you said you've never dated a South African. All of them, most of them, they are burning like me.
Oh, maybe let me break the ice. I've been platonic with a South African, but I've never been in a relationship with a South African. I've kissed a South African. All of those things. I'm saying I've never dated a South African. For me to get to a point where there's expected provision and I'm dating, like, dating, being in a relationship. So sometimes you judge a situation without understanding.
Sukuzwile, my sister. Ukisa nongakisi. Akubalulekanga. We heard you, my sister. You never dated a South African. And I will lick our wounds. We'll lick our wounds and move on with life. So
no, I'm
please
gonna
don't
marry a
go.
Zulu man. Okay, thanks.
You, Noli and Pendulo, please don't go in Zania. You have a lot to say, and I love how you are so informed. Let's go. Family, please follow this account. I think we have about 50 followers since we started. Now we are on 3 hours. Family, but we are 200.
Must deal with Zimbabwe's issues. But in the same vein, when South African women say South African men, we are the first ones to say, but not all men. So we find ourselves like repeating a lot of the same things against those we are against that we do not like peddled towards us, and it doesn't help us in having these discussions and moving forward and getting to a real consensus about how we move forward as a country. The sad truth is, I've been listening to my brothers and they've made very poignant statements, but they've said things that just can't be true. Someone had said earlier, and it might be the host, Uguti, are South African men not treating women in. The only person who you can ask for that information is the person you're treating well. You cannot tell a king, hey, I'm treating you well. The king is the one who designates to you, the person who is being looked after, if what you're doing for them is adequate for what they need in Bilonyab. And if people feel like they can get better, allow them to get better. Let them get better. Mixing this situation of the social economic section in South Africa and Mali and my relationships in Daonge is a very obvious. Yes, there might be an issue with illegal mining. There might be an issue with abantu buying things and selling them without paying taxes and making more money than we do. But to take that and make that an issue of our relationships doesn't make sense, specifically when our biggest issues in this country are more aligned with the GPV and the treatment and the way we communicate with our women in comparison to women around the world. We're one of the worst countries when it comes to GPV. So our women are the least safe. So maybe we should work on our safety before we expect Umuntu to feel safe around us. Like there are so many things that because of our own actions, we are causing to be the results of them moving away and moving with our bangabantu, that instead of going, maybe we should try to at least improve on the things that you need to improve on in order for you to have a good relationship. We expect women to accept the bare minimum with a smile on their face. When umuntu knows ukuthi they're living their life for themselves, when they come on this earth, they'll die on this earth. No one's going to go with them. They're going to be by themselves, but we're expecting these people to make sacrifices, even though those sacrifices are going to benefit us as men. So circular logic, unfortunately, gents, with this discussion. There's a lot of, this doesn't make sense, but when you make your point, you're saying the exact same thing. And there's a lot of taking your rhetoric. When I'm a racist. We have a very massive ownership mentality in this country when it comes to how we view our black women. It's very upsetting and very sad. We look at them and think, oh, because we don't have land, which is into we want to get a job. And so we feel like the only asset that we can have actual control over, and they tell us this in their rhetoric. They tell us how they feel, but instead of listening, we do the white person thing where umlungu likes to tell here's how you must feel about race. We are telling women the exact same thing, but then getting confused with why our wires are crossed. So I didn't want to say too much, but I wanted to make it clear. When you're speaking about an individual's ability to choose who they want to be with, you don't have a say, as much as you would like to have that say. If that person is making it clear that you're making them unsafe, and the numbers and statistics show to an unsafe environment, expecting them to accept unsafe environment before you make the environment less safe doesn't make sense. Now you wouldn't accept your situation, Leo. So to expect women to put their life on the line, because when it comes to GBV and relationships in this nation, it is a life and death situation. To put their life on the line because you feel like she owes that to you, it doesn't make sense. So that's all I wanted to say.
Ash, brother, I wish you spoke more, man. I wish you still have 2 minutes, bro.
It depends on... I can continue. There's a lot more to say on this topic.
Let me ask you, let me throw in one question for you. Do you think South African men are also part of the problem, or
we are
not?
The problem? We are the problem. You know what it is? I always explain it this way. If, let's say, not all South African men are abusers, that's clear. But those who are not abusers are doing nothing to help the situation. If, let's say, the municipality is saying, hey, Ingane, too many children are being run over this road, so we need to find a way to keep cars from running over the children. The government doesn't ask the children, hey guys, slow down, stop crossing the road. They put a speed hump. they force socially a way to make it difficult for him to run down this road at 55 kilometers per hour. They might not be the fast driver, but they don't say, but man, I don't drive fast, so it isn't my issue. They do something about it. That's what a protector actually does. They actually protect. They don't feel like they're protecting while just protecting their ego. They actually do the work. And so for me, I take responsibility. I've never touched a woman. I've never done anything even remotely harmful to a woman. But my silence is making it easy for these men to do this thing. You can't subscribe to something and then act just because it isn't your invention, but you subscribe and you keep its benefits going. Then all of a sudden, I know it's not me, it's not me, it's not me. To make it more difficult for the abuser. Or are you just going to make it an issue of the perpetrator? You're going to blame the victim. No, you must come back at this time and you must remove autonomy now from our individuals. People's rights must now be limited because instead of you making it more difficult for abuse to occur, you want to make it an issue of the abuser. Of course, we are part of the problem. Of course we are. But it isn't a problem that we have caused. It is a problem that has landed on us. We are the most unemployed country in the whole world. Number one, we have the biggest inequality in the whole world. Number one, our men have no money, we have no land, we have no prospects. And we live in a society where your ability to date is predicated on your economic value while having low economic value. That is a recipe for depression, suicide, killings, GBV, and all the sorts. But South African men need to deal with that before asking Abantu besifazane to accept conditions as they are. I don't know how that doesn't just seem like the most logical way to move forward when addressing these issues.
Sure.
I don't want to blame us. We are victims of this circumstance, but it's up to us to do something to at least start to create change in the right direction, as opposed to being like, but I'm not doing anything, so it can't be on me. No, I'm not doing anything. I'm not the one doing the killing. Yeah, but you have paved a very clear road for an abuser to travel. Because the moment he kills, instead of saying no, yes, that's all. That's all I wanted to say. Yeah, that's my crux down. Bella was adding on top of my point.